Hello everyone. So today I'm going to be showing you how to adjust the windows on your calculator. So sometimes when you're graphing equations and you go look at the graph, you notice that you have to fix your window so that you can get a better look at your graph. So for example, let's say you are trying to graph the quadratic equation y is equal to x squared plus 15. Okay, once you type it into the calculator, if you go look at the graph, notice you don't see your graph on here. The reason why is because every time you reset your calculator, the settings automatically go, if you look at your x-axis, it only goes from -10 to +10. Same thing on the y-axis. If you look at the y-axis, it only goes from -10 all the way up to a +10. Those are your regular settings. So if you're ever trying to graph, look at the picture of a graph and you cannot see it on your calculator, you might need to change your windows so that you can get a better look at your graph. So the way you do that is there's this button right here. It says window. Okay, and again, notice how your x minimum is a -10, your x maximum is a +10. That means on the x-axis, it goes from a -10 to a +10. Your scale, I always go ahead and leave it at 1. What that means is every little tick mark is counting by 1, so I never mess with that because it automatically adjusts it. If you look at your y min and y max, it's also from -10 to +10 because it only goes down to a -10 and as far up to a +10. And again, the y scale, I leave it at 1 because I want it to be counting by ones all the time. Okay, so if I want to see the graph to this quadratic equation that I just graphed, I'm going to go ahead and change my windows. On my x and y, x min and y max, I'm not going to change those. I am going to change my y min and my y max. So for example, on my y min, I don't want it to go all the way down to -10. I'm going to go ahead and go to 0. I'm going to have it start at 0. And on the y max, it's only going up to 10. Let's go ahead and change this to, let's say, 25. Okay, now if I go look at the graph, notice how on the x-axis, it goes from a -10 to a +10, okay, because I didn't change those. But on the y-axis, it no longer goes all the way down to a -10. I started it at 0 and I increased it all the way up to 25. So now you can see my parabola a little bit better. I ended up cutting off that little space on the bottom and I went up a little bit higher. Okay, so that's one way to adjust the windows. So on this one, I made the windows bigger. You can always make your windows smaller so that you can get a closer look at a graph as well. So let me go ahead and do an example like that. Let's say you're trying to graph the quadratic equation the quantity of x minus 5 squared. And again, if I go look at the graph, okay, notice how the parabola comes out over here on the right-hand side. And I have all this extra space over here on the left that I really don't need. So if, let's say, for example, you're working on the first quadrant only and you don't need the second quadrant over here, you can always adjust your window so that you can get a better, closer look at the parabola. So if I go to the windows, on my x minimum, it goes all the way to a -10. If I don't want it to go all the way to a -10 because that's just wasted space, I can go ahead and start at 0. For my maximum, I'll go ahead and keep it at 10. The scale, again, you always want to leave it at 1. Now on the y-axis, I'm going to leave it at 0 so that I can just concentrate on quadrant 1. And for the maximum, I can leave it at 25. If you want to get a closer look, you can go ahead and change it to 10. It's up to you. Okay, let me go ahead and change this back to 10 and see what that parabola looks like. There you go. So if you notice, the parabola looks, we get a closer look at the parabola. But more importantly, I want you to look at the axis. So on the x-axis, this is the 0, this is the origin, and it goes all the way up to a +10 only because that's what I put on the windows for it to go from 0 to a +10. And on the y-axis, again, it starts at a 0 and it only goes up to a +10 because if you look at the windows, that's exactly what I chose, a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 10. Okay, so again, anytime you're working with trying to graph equations, if you go look at the graph and you need to get a closer look, you can make your window smaller, or if you need to make your windows bigger because you cannot see your graph, you can do that as well.